start recording. Hello, good day, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We are today on our 9th session out of 22, and we are on our second cluster. We started last week speaking about AI software tools, different digital platforms that can help us in our knowledge management tasks. There's a handful of such software tools, and we are trying to bring every week a different type of a software. And last week we saw Megaputer with its text and data analytics. And today we will meet Gregory and Mark from Coveo, who will demonstrate a smart search engine, of course, an AI-based smart search engine. I will pass the hosting to Art. Annie couldn't join because of personal issues. So Art is taking her place today. But I want to thank Gregory and Mark, especially personally Mark, who now is at 6 a.m. And if he says something that's not reasonable, it's not him, it's the hour. So please be very, very patient. And I'm sure that even though he will say, all right, everything as we expect. So Art, please, you may start.
All right, thank you, Mariah. Yes, and hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're very excited to have as our guest today, our vendor guest, Coveo. As you know, if you are followers of KM World, like I am, you know that KM World annually comes out with their KM 100 award, the top 100 companies that matter in knowledge management. And our own company, Applied Knowledge Sciences, is a previous winner of that award, and we're very proud of that. But if my count is correct, our guests today, their company, Coveo, I think has won that award 15 times by my count. So they're very much in rarefied, very highly respected in the KM community. And you'll see their product will amaze you. And I'm going to turn this over to them in a minute. We always heard about getting the right information to the right person at the right time, blah, 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 right? Everybody says that. I think the product you're going to see today actually does that. We're talking about search that is personalized, okay? It uses AI to make the search results more personalized and situational to the job, relevant to the job that you are doing, and with AI running in the background to optimize that. So I'm very excited about seeing what they're going to show us. Let me introduce to you our two guests. We'll be hearing from Greg Laporte, who's their Director of Product Development. He's based in Montreal. And he has worked with the product probably since the early days. So he was a developer on the team, the original team, and is now a product development manager. And also he'll be joined by Mark Floysen, who's over in Silicon Valley on the West Coast of the US. And he's their Senior Vice President for Product Marketing. And he comes from a long line of Silicon Valley heavies. He's been with Adobe, Apple, Business Objects, SAP. So we have some very excellent and highly qualified guests here. And I would like to now turn this over. Mark, I understand you're going to kick it off. So please welcome everyone to Mark and Gregory. And Mark, go ahead, take it away.
Just one more sentence, please. Sure. Dear people, we put some information about Coveo, also about the software, and also about Mark and Gregory in our new shared drive. So you can find there all materials, and we will add additional materials. You can already go and look there now, and you can see the long list of Gregory and Mark's credentials. Thank you, and Mark, please.
Maria, thank you, and I appreciate it. And of course, using knowledge management principles, that information has been made available just in time, and I'm sure it's 90% right, done within 90 minutes of this. So there we go. Yeah, my name is Mark Floyson, delighted to be here today. The price I pay for living in California is early starts when the rest of the world has already been up and done their day job. So I'm joined by my colleague, Greg. Greg, as you heard, is in Montreal. Greg has been with Coveo for I think 8 years now, and really has been central to building out our product, and then moved into senior product management as well, and now directs our product team there. So hopefully you're in good hands. I'm going to take the first half of this and kind of give you some of the theory and the principles behind what we do, maybe look at some of the examples and use cases of where we apply our technology, utilizing search capability to the area of knowledge management, and then hand it over to Greg, who will actually show you more of a hands-on of the product itself. So and we'll make sure we leave time for questions as well. So let's get straight in, make sure we've got everything going here. Let's just start and sort of level set. Cognitive search. You saw the word in the title. People have different definitions of it. I kind of went back to the source on this, which is cognitive search is one of the words that's heavily used by Forrester. This is actually the Forrester Wave from, I think, 2019. They're currently in the middle of the other one. And their definition of cognitive search is about how it augments employees' intelligence, augments is a keyword, to help them make smarter decisions and complete tasks faster. So fundamentally, how do you make people more proficient? By giving them the right information at the right time. It helps customers support themselves and find information about products and services. So not just internal facing, but also external facing as well. The whole essence of it is, how do you enable people to effectively get information that adds to their ability to make decisions, do what they need to do it faster, and learn along the way. So, as you can see, without plugging, Coveo is up at the top on the right here, and we've been in that position for some time, as you heard from our credentials. So a little bit about us, just very briefly, just to set the scene, those that don't know us. So we have several pieces to our business. One of them is we have a workplace solutions side of the house, which is very much where a lot of our search is deployed. And fundamentally, it's about making it easy for people across different enterprise applications to be able to find the information they're doing in their day jobs, to enable them to be more productive by not having to scour and waste time. Why are we here? Just very, very briefly. So we've been at this a while, as Art said, and he kindly was keeping count there. We've been at this a while. We were established in 2005, and along the way have had a history of adding to our capabilities across our core platform that take advantage of sort of new technology as it comes about, whether that's been embracing machine learning, embracing layered machine learning, let's call that deep learning. And along the way, effectively evolving the kind of capabilities that our own platform has had. So starting with this notion of connecting to information securely, being able to index that, make that content available in a cloud fashion so that it's highly scalable, be able to deploy it into different applications, and then really sort of moving our way through, and as you'll see, deeper and deeper into personalization as we go. So what of that? Search, we really believe, is the first step to delivering relevant knowledge. And a large part of that is you want to firstly be able to give people what they want. If I know I want something, then it's actually a pretty straightforward definition of whether you're successful in giving it to me is, did I find what I needed? And that simple sort of bar should be against what all of these things are judged. In reality, what we do find is that there are circumstances where people don't find what they need, and that's highly counterproductive. It's actually negative in the sense that it can waste time. And so what we really believe first and foremost is be responsive to what your employees, what your constituents, what your customers are looking for, by understanding the context of what they're doing and giving them, ultimately what they want, what they're looking for. So our starting point on this is, make sure that search fundamentally is robust and enables people to get the information they seek. However, we're of course in the information age. A large part of this course is about utilizing AI to enhance the experience. And so given the ability to understand what people are looking for and being responsive to what they're looking for, we and platforms like ours of course, are learning all the time as to what good looks like. If someone searched for a particular asset or document and that was proven to be a useful outcome for them, we are able to learn from that behavior and start to recommend what other stuff people will need by observing the behavior of crowds. So if, in volume, more people that looked at one document also looked at another, we can infer that subsequent people that look at this document probably would be interested in that one too. It's math. And so we can make these recommendations where we're anticipating what people will need. We're suggesting to them things that are going to be helpful for them based on their intent, based on having observed the behavioral analytics of the content, what people are consuming, utilizing machine learning to analyze that data and make recommendations based on the behavior of people like you. So we go from just search, where we're understanding what they look for, to recommendations where we're anticipating what they'll also need as well. And then the third step of this fundamentally is about anticipating what they're going to need next. Utilizing knowledge of them as individuals, the circumstance that they have, the journey that they're on, to anticipate and personalize for them and uniquely for them what documents, what assets, what components, what products, whatever it happens to be, what is going to optimize their ongoing journey, not as a one-off instance of, I went to a website or an intranet and I searched for something, not just that I was suggested and recommended some additional things while I was there, but that continuous ongoing relationship. That might be an employee relationship where the more you learn about this person based on what they do and the role they have and the people they communicate with, the more you can service them, or externally. Same thing with customers and prospects as well. So the point is there's a step here of maturation, if you like, that companies go through that is about starting with search, utilizing the learnings from that to start to predict and recommend and increasingly personalize the information that is provided. And so you can think of that as, help organizations to fix that search relevance first. Things like unified search, pulling together the capability to understand the context of that content within a single index, being able to rank it automatically, not through rules, but through an automated process of understanding the relationships between these different types of information, and providing navigational capability that makes it very easy for people to find their way through that information. All of that utilizing capabilities such as AI-powered query suggestions. So again, not building out rules and having to manually maintain how to help people dynamically find what they're looking for, but to harness the power of machine learning under the hood to make recommendations based on what the data says other people have used. We're accustomed to this, as a populace now. We've had 20 years of Google teaching us to expect great suggested search queries. This is not just for Google, it's for everybody. And then tailoring that experience, as I say, moving into that recommendation where you're fundamentally thinking about how to, change the navigation itself, not just the search queries, but the actual navigation to make it more tailored to helping someone get to an outcome. Example, if I'm on an e-commerce site and there's, millions of items in that catalog, how do those facets, those filters dynamically change to help narrow down my choices? Using logical, AI-powered capabilities under the hood that strip away anything that's frankly in the way of me getting in the way. If there are facets that are irrelevant, don't show them. And again, this needs to be driven automatically using the system, not manually, because that no one can keep up. And then that notion of stitching these journeys together across these different touch points. You'll see when we think of it, I'll give you a couple of examples in an internal scenario where there are so many different places, for example, that employees may engage with different systems depending on what they're doing, what their role is. And how do you make sure that across these different systems, across these different channels, that they're joined up? And that's the same in an external use case as well, whether it's on a website and an e-commerce store or a self-service portal. How are you utilizing learning from their interactions on one system and allowing the machine learning to make recommendations on another, because it's the same person? So fundamentally, this notion of starting with search, gathering information, learning from the data, becoming increasingly personalized, that is in essence how AI has changed the way that search is now a fundamental part of the knowledge journey for both employees and customers alike. Here's the irony. There's this HR research that basically says people say they're underutilized and underinformed, and they spend 26 days a year looking for information. Now, you know, I don't know if that's right or wrong. It sounds like a lot to me, but without doubt, I know from my own experience that prior to joining Coveo, and I think we've all been there. You spend a lot of time trying to assimilate information for reports, for whatever it is you need to do, and there are better ways. You know, the reality of it is that what the sad thing we see is that what capabilities, like, can you go on mute if you're traveling, just because there's background noise for other folks? Manoj, can you go on mute, please? Thank you. So how's time spent? You know, 25% time spent searching, 23% in email, and 16% in unnecessary meetings, according to Inc. magazine and Economy Times. Basically leaving about a third of the day for something productive. This is real. This is the cost we bear as employees, right? What we also know is that, of course, unsurprisingly, employees have an expectation, which is that they should be able to find the information they need to do their work. They should be able to take advantage of other people's shared knowledge. That's the essence of knowledge management. And they should be able to get things to help them, whether that's in support of their direct tasks or in support of the workplace itself, if you think of things like help desks and so on. Why do they expect it?
Hey, Mark, Mark, I got a quick pop-up question from Simon. I think it's relevant because you're talking about time, productivity, and that. His question is, how long does it take the machine to learn to go search for that?
Yeah, great question. So Art, the answer to that is it depends on the size of the organization. What we find is that companies with, you know, a lot of documents, a lot of data, a lot of people interacting with it, the machine learning learns really fast. It's math. But if you're a small organization with, I don't know, a small website and a low volume of traffic, it's going to take longer to build up a statistically valid set of data. So it, you know, depends on the volume. But the higher volume you have, the quicker the machine learning runs. We typically see our clients turning on the machine learning capabilities, and in days and weeks, they've seen huge improvements.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sure. Here's the reality of a lot of the, you know, scenario that people live with today. The employees are basically bouncing around between these different systems. They are interacting with different groups of people. And this is the reality that most of us are dealing with. These things are all over the shop and they're not necessarily connected. The irony of it is that what we've seen, for example, from Forwards is, you know, 80% of executives rate the employee experience as being important for their company, but only 20% feel that they're actually delivering, you know, excellence in that arena. So there's a huge disconnect. What we also recognize is that a lot of the IT teams that are there trying to support people actually having the right information and the right systems are actually tied up managing legacy systems, kind of, you know, keeping the duct tape on, rather than thinking about the solutions that are required for those employees to be able to be better knowledge workers, for example. So there's a huge disconnect in terms of, you know, good, talented IT folks maintaining stuff that frankly is not helping. And so if we think about this, how do we effectively enable this to happen throughout the organization, utilizing search at its fundamental? And I guess the way to describe this is, look at an organization in terms of, for example, its front office, its middle office, and its back office. There are different roles, there are different systems, there are different portals and the like that people in their day jobs communicate in. So if I'm in the front office, if I'm in sales and marketing, I might be spending a lot of time, for example, with something like a Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or some sort of CRM tool. And I might be utilizing assets out of brand portals such as, and they might be stored in things like Google Drive or Box or Frontify or, you know, these kind of things to manage brands. If we think of folks in the middle office, they might be collaborating with each other through tools like Jive and SharePoint and so on. If we think of the folks that are in service of other employees, so HR and IT, they too have these tools that they put out there, HR portals, IT help desks and the like, and they might be utilizing products such as ServiceNow. And I can work my way through this list. Every department has its objectives. Who does it serve? They have their systems, they have their processes, they have their documents, and they are all siloed. And we see this time and time and time again. And I'm sure you see it in your own organizations as well. So how do you join the front office, the middle office, the back office? How do you unify the information within these systems? How do you take advantage of the data that could be acquired about what documents people are finding useful in all this? That is the essence of taking advantage of unified search across these capabilities that is effectively able to find out what's relevant for every individual. And the AI effectively then, making that content available, recommending it, and becoming increasingly personalized as it goes. And so a large part of this is making sure to be able to join the dots here, to have this information indexed, bring it together, not move it around, but index it, make it available, and put it to work from whichever of these systems and more that the typical enterprise has to cope with. So if we think of, the essence of it, search is about helping enable people, be more effective in the workplace. And so here are some typical things that we see. And then what we'll do is we'll walk you through and actually show you some of the stuff in the product. These are some of the typical things that we see organizations embracing to improve the knowledge management across an organization. So having a single search experience is really, really important. And the reason I say that is that, again, if you've got these sort of federated, siloed bits of search scattered all over, it doesn't actually help the employee, because they're having to go look at one thing over here, finding out that they couldn't find it, then they waste time looking for something over here. It's kind of like swivel chairs, and you're doing the same thing time and time again, trying to find the right answer. The second part of this is understanding and analyzing what actually worked. How do you get insight from employee behavior that can inform what other information would be useful for them? How to effectively apply those insights to deliver relevant self-service experiences. This is in essence what search enables, not just that finding, giving them what they're looking for, but anticipating what they really, will also need and what they'll need next. And going beyond this sort of notion of, well, here's all the plethora of general information, but getting deep, getting domain specific, understanding what's useful for someone in their particular role, not based on their job title necessarily, but based on what other people doing similar things also found useful. Enabling the folks that are in the help of the rest of the employee base, things like, as I said, IT and HR, help them deliver better self-service so that they're able to effectively, let's call it deflect cases, like lower the cost to support people and enable them to service themselves inside the organization or externally for that matter. And if you think of those sort of service management systems like the ServiceNows and so on, how do you add AI-based recommendations and search capabilities inside those applications themselves? So this shouldn't be about necessarily going somewhere to find information, but actually having it as part of the systems that people use in their day jobs as well. But
Mark, on that point, we do have a very good question. And that question is this pretty much a black box system, or does the user get any insights like explainable AI or whatever, where those recommendations came from? And maybe even take it to the next step. Does the user have any role at all in refining those recommendations going forward?
Yeah, great question. So short answer, not a black box. Indeed, what you'll see as we kind of open the kimono a little bit, you'll get a sense of just, how easy and how configurable and indeed how transparent we are. What you'll also see is that the way we look for feedback, we actually have capabilities, and I'll touch on, I have a slide on this actually in a slide or two. We're always seeking feedback from the user. And so a simple example would be, let's think in the case of within a call center environment where there are people perhaps on the phone helping folks out. and they're able to, they're recommended the right documents for the conversation that they're having with that person in real time, but can absolutely flag that this was something that was useful and that solved their problem. Equally, think of again, the explicit check mark that someone might put in if they find a document on a website and ask if it's helpful. That's always a subset of people that are giving that feedback, but it's super helpful. We also use implicit feedback. So how do we start to identify that if we made a recommendation before somebody, for example, filled in a form to seek help, they clicked on that recommendation and they stopped their session, you can infer either they got completely distracted and went away, or that the document that they got is probably right. And so again, what we're able to do is get that feedback both implicitly and explicitly from the users themselves.
Great, very good, thank you.
All right, let's have a quick look at each of these in turn, and then just keeping an eye on time, I'll make sure that I try and finish in the next 5 minutes or so as we can switch over and actually have a look at the product. But if we think of it, so enabling teams with a single search and knowledge experience, what you want to be able to do is give people simply one place. And obviously, for a lot of organizations, starting with the company intranet's a really good place to go, because that's typically where a lot of folks are trying to seek information by definition. How do you deliver them unified dynamic results that have come from lots of different data sources in places that are relevant to them? So again, this is putting search to work, enabling them to effectively, front and center, put in any keyword and have information come back to them that's recommended based on, for example, other things they searched for before. So of course, we have user profiles. We can keep a track of what someone's done. So what would be helpful to them based on what we know they've looked at in the past, based on recommended people, or understanding who can help them based on the sort of documents they've looked at. So here what we're thinking about is who are the mavens within the organization? Who are the people who haven't just created documents, but that Coveo has tracked that those documents have been utilized? Because that's the true test of whether someone is credible. It's not their title, it's how much their own material was utilized, reutilized, shared, and so on and so forth. So recommending people to interact with based on the sort of document history. And then, of course, frankly, looking at the volume. So these are examples of ways that we have machine learning models under the hood that are able to find and recommend content based on what someone's looking for from these different lenses. Excuse me. That notion of analytics. So again, really important to understand the behavior, where folks come from, but equally, and much more importantly, and this speaks to the earlier point, the earlier question, what are the gaps? Nothing's perfect. And so one of the things that we do is ensure that the Coveo administrators are able to get reports that show what people didn't find. That's as valuable as what they did, because that points to where, for example, there may be a document gap. That's the sort of thing that can be given back to a content team to identify where there are opportunities to help people, all tracked by volume and so on. If you think of this from an external facing point of view, this is the sort of gold mine that product managers look for in terms of web analytics. So what were people looking for on my store that I didn't have? Because that's a clue about what I might want to go and procure to merchandise because people are trying to buy it. Maybe they're looking for competitor terms on my site. Or maybe they're looking for brands that I don't carry. Those are signals, content gaps manifest that can be actionable and turned into money. We talked about this notion of relevant self-service. So again, what you're seeing here is this notion of query-based type aheads. So when someone, for example, is looking at something like searching for an expense, and we see here this is with a typo, how is that automatically being, how are we recommending search terms that other people have already found helpful, irrespective of the fact that this isn't even spelled properly? None of this should be maintained manually. This is utilizing AI under the hood to automate this process and free up people's time so that you haven't got an army of elves behind you having to create thesauruses and constantly chasing their tails. What you also see is this notion of how do you, and I mentioned this earlier, how do you, for example, show and recommend the things that have proven to be most relevant to folks? In this case, if I'm looking for expense reports, what we know in the data is that although I started typing expenses, what people have found most useful is how to file an expense report. If we've learned that, let's recommend it. This notion of understanding depth. So being able to understand not only content recommended based on someone's work history, what have they touched, what have they worked with, what other products, for example, might they be engaged with, but which people have they, would we recommend they interact with as well? Where do like-minded mavens and guilds, if you like, of similar intent live within the organization? Also really important to be able to take advantage of the fact that, once this information is available and gives people the ability to potentially serve themselves, there is a significant cost saving to be had for organizations that get this right. Because in this case, for example, let's think of the help desk scenario within an organization. If someone has, in this case, found that they are, struggling with can't connect Slack to Jira, which is what they started typing in here, just the fact that someone's typing into a form, that's a search. It doesn't look like a search box, but it's input. This could just as easily be a chatbot. It could be a voice chat. The point is, there is text input that can be thrown to a search index and an answer retrieved. We happen to do that in real time. So that when someone's typing in can't connect Slack to Jira, what you're seeing immediately popped up on the right-hand side are recommended documents that we believe will answer that question. Top of the list, how to connect Slack to Jira. How to use Slack. Again, recommended utilizing machine learning models that have analyzed what other people who had similar kind of problems found useful. And so what this could well do, I'm typing in can't connect Slack to Jira, boom, I see this pop up on the right. I click on it, I read it, I'm done. I didn't submit a case. I didn't get somebody spun up with that urgency button on the bottom, and the company lowered the cost to serve my internal problem. Helping that along even further goes all the way into things like, systems such as ServiceNow, Salesforce, and the like, where we have large numbers of employees in most organizations in the service of customers, in sales roles, in internal support roles, and so on, where, for example, you want to be able to take advantage of the entire journey that someone's had and recommend what's appropriate to the people who are helping them. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side here, for example, is I happen to be in a ServiceNow system. There's a query in here about tuition reimbursement. It's a perfectly valid question to send to an HR team. What I see is that there is search capability embedded into ServiceNow. So again, we're taking the search into the applications that people use every day. And what we're also seeing is that there are annotations in here that show what's already been read. So if I'm the HR agent whose job it is to follow up on this query about tuition reimbursement that's come from our friend Susan Cook here, I can see that Susan has already viewed the tuition reimbursement policy. There was obviously something in there that didn't work for her, otherwise she wouldn't be calling us, right? I can see what user actions she's had, what she's engaged with, what she's read, and therefore I can be more informed when I get back to her to give her something else. I've assimilated the knowledge of what she's already tried. I'm not going to waste her time. And finally, think about that capability being put in every application employees work with, or for that matter, externally on every website, every mobile app, every e-store. The ability to carry this shared knowledge that has been acquired across these different systems and utilize it in other places as well. Think of that as the sort of your classic help file, maybe in a mobile app or a website app, where someone starts typing and this capability pops up right there and then. The point is that people don't necessarily have to go to search. Cognitive search isn't necessarily where you go to get something done. The capability can be embedded across where they already are. So does it make a difference? Yes, it does. Just a few examples here of, Dell, 3 times improvement in employee satisfaction. Honeywell seeing 2/3 of their internal cases being dropped because people could find the information they needed themselves. Grant Thornton seeing a significant lift in employee engagement with the content and the materials they had. You know, UW Health, huge drop in the information where people were trying to find stuff and didn't have results. Those are those content gaps I was talking about. Manulife, seeing a huge shift in people being guided by AI recommendations. And there's dollars underneath all of these as well. So with that, hopefully that's given you an overview and a framework. At this point, let's switch over to Greg to actually show you the product live rather than me spouting on. So Greg, I'll stop sharing here and hopefully that should free you up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. By the way, I see a lot of questions. Should we address them now or at the end? What do you prefer?
I would say, Greg, if you can answer them as if something comes up in the demo that answers a question or addresses some of them, you can do it that way. I'll leave it up to you because we definitely want to see a good part of the demo. And again, this group consists of KM people, but we're focusing on AI and how can AI help KM. So I think what you're showing us is definitely relevant to that. So anytime you demonstrate a functionality, if you can give us a little peek or a little insight into how the AI is actually making that happen, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. Sounds perfectly good. Can you see my screen right now? Can you see
the other thing? I don't want to distract people, but maybe while you're working on the demo, maybe Mark can go through some of those questions and maybe answer them in the chat box. But I said I don't want everybody going in the chat box and not paying attention to the demo. So we can just play it that way. Maybe play it by ear that way. Does that make sense?
That sounds perfect. I can touch on some of those while I'm demoing for sure. So can you see my screen already?
Thanks. Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So as Mark said, the first step in helping with the relevance problem is to index the content, getting access to all those sources of content. As we know, it's not always in the same place. And this is a great example that we did in the demo. So you might have content in Google Drive, you might have content in SharePoint, you might have content externally. I saw a question about indexing externally, external resource like LexisNexis, Forrester, etc. So to answer this question, we absolutely have the technical ability to. The licensing depends on obviously what you've negotiated with those vendors, but from a technical perspective, Coveo can actually get to those sources. So as you can see here, we have different ways to get to content. We have native connectors to various systems, but we also have generic connectors. For instance, a push API, so you can build your own app that will push content to Coveo. But you can also use things like our generic REST, sitemap, web connector, web crawler, etc., to get to these content sources. And we support all sorts of authentication mechanism to get access to those. So really, this is the first step, as we said, really building your index, making sure that all the content that will help your external audience find what they're looking for, really that's the first step. And once you've built that within Coveo, then you can surface this content anywhere you'd like. So just to give you an example, this is let's say a homegrown portal that you might want to build for your internal audience. So here I'm at Elvents, I'm working in marketing. And as you can see, we're using Coveo to recommend content even before I do any type of search. So first of all, I can see what my team is working on. I can see what are the popular documents related to what I'm working on also. New people who just joined the company, my recent contributions. I can also see popular queries that other employees might have done. And all of these content obviously comes from the different sources that were indexed. So it doesn't matter if this content is in one system or another. This system will learn from the interactions, what people have been searching for, what they've clicked on, what is the most relevant. Obviously, there's a big component of search in there as well. So if I want to go ahead and search for something, I can even do voice search here, Mark 8. So if I search, oh, I said here. If I search for Mark 8, you can see that I'm showing a ton of results here on this project that I'm working on. So as Mark said, yes, we can search for IT content, we can search for HR, we can search for corporate, we can also search for domain specific as well. So if you're in if you're in marketing working on the specific project, we can definitely surface the content about this project specifically. So here, obviously, I can go across all content, files. I can go across news, email, people, etc. Speaking of people, let's say I want to search for my manager here. So my manager is Ligu. He's director of manufacturing. And here, if I open, oops, sorry about that. If I open the quick view, you can see how rich information we can show. Because we have access to all these content sources, first of all, we can know what did Lee contributed to. So HR news, Q&A, etc. I can see what type of content he's been interacting with the most. I can see the related documents and also the related team documents. So which documents that my team specifically worked on. And since we have access to all this content, we can also build this this org chart, basically looking at who's the manager, etc., so that you can navigate and look at the profile of all of my colleagues here and what are they working on the most. So good. So this is an example of, as I said, own world portal, but it doesn't stop there. We also built something called a Chrome extension, which allows you to integrate Coveo in any type of system that your employee would be using. So in this case, for instance, I can be in SharePoint, Office 365, etc., and we can surface what we call our in-product experience. So here, because I'm on this page, I'm already recommending content. So I know that I'm at Advance. I'm working in SharePoint, so I'm working on this Mark 8 project. So already I'm recommending content, but then I can just go ahead and search for content here as well. So smaller search experience, but really gets you where you are. Sorry, did I hear your question here?
No, I think that's background noise.
Oh, okay.
I suggest a minute. I will mute everyone, and please, Gregory, unmute yourself, and then no one can interfere.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. So really, the goal of this integration is really to bring Coveo everywhere you are. And I saw one of the questions is Coveo an intranet vendor? And we're really not an intranet vendor. We add a ton of value on top of your intranet, but also any other systems that your employees might be using by providing search experiences anywhere they need them. So really, it's about meeting the employee where they are with a very powerful search experience where they can search for content. So, so really, this is an example of what Coveo can do from a recommendation and search perspective, but Coveo can also integrate in other channels as well. So to give you an example here, I'm within ServiceNow, and I want to interact with this chatbot capability. So this is something increasingly popular among employee experience, building a chatbot, building something where employee can self-service. So here, this is an example. We've integrated into ServiceNow, but we could integrate into any chatbot technology that you might be using. And what we've learned with our experience in talking to customers is, yes, those are great, but they require a lot of configuration and time, because all of these things needs to be configured manually, etc. And frankly, company doesn't have time to do that. So what we came up with is say, what about using search and AI to respond to most of the questions for which you don't have a dedicated process. So here, if I go ahead and I search for something else, the chatbot is prompting me with a question. So what can I help you with? And in this case, I'd like to do an MBA, and I want to know if the company will reimburse my tuition. If I go ahead, so as I'm searching in here, I'm searching in natural language. What Coveo does is it uses the power of AI to understand the intent and extract the keywords out of that sentence to recommend content that people have clicked on in the past when they search for things related to tuition reimbursement. So right within the chatbot, I can recommend this content. So again, just wanted to go back to this concept of you're building your Coveo platform, you're building your Coveo index, and then it can be used in any touch point that you would like to surface this content. Another use case that Mark briefly touched upon earlier is how can I help employees help themselves? So if I'm having a problem trying to create an incident because I can't connect to the VPN, this is ruining my productivity because I need to access some documents. Here, as I'm typing, Coveo proactively recommends content on the right-hand side. So again, looking at the IT knowledge base, but maybe other type of knowledge base as well. Maybe there's some external services with, if you're using Cisco, for instance, maybe you want to index the Cisco knowledge base, etc., and surface this content right there so that your employees find the information they're looking for and they can continue working without being interrupted. And we've talked a lot about personalization, and you might ask, so how do you do personalization? I saw a question also about do we need to create ontologies, etc. And this is really something that we're trying to get as far as we can from, because we know that it's hard, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of manual configuration, etc. So what Coveo does is we try to use all the information that we have and all the context that we have to build our machine learning models. So we're looking at, okay, people who actually search for this usually click on those documents and looking at positive outcomes, people going on the website, searching, leaving the website, we know that, okay, they most likely found what they're looking for. But if we're seeing this pattern over and over, now we know that this document seems to be the answer to the question. And here I can show you, this is a demo widget. This is not something production-wise, but it shows you the type of information that we can leverage to further personalize the information. So as we said earlier, I'm based in Montreal. So if I'm searching for office location, etc., I already know that I'm in Montreal. So I can look at, okay, people who search for booking a room, etc., in Montreal usually click on this document, etc. So this is all additional information we can use to inform our machine learning and make the recommendation more personalized. So this shows you at a high level what the end user experience can look like. As I said earlier, this is a homegrown community, but you could also build your own. You could also build something on ServiceNow. This is a ServiceNow portal, and instead of being just an IT portal where you create tickets, then it becomes a very rich experience where we can recommend content. We can recommend content based on the fact that you're hiring someone new. We can recommend content based on where you live. And we can also recommend external content about, okay, yeah, we want our employees' wellness is important. We want them to do more sport, etc. So can we recommend them content based on their interest as well? So these are all things that Coveo can do to enrich any type of experience that you might have internally. So now I'd like to flip it to the backend side, if you will. So what happens if I actually create a ticket and I have to handle it? So here what you see is the ticket that was created. So someone, instead of self-serving, they ended up creating these tickets. So tuition reimbursement inquiry, I'm planning to do an MBA, wondering what are the options, etc. So as an HR BP or as an HR agent, I can look at this and I already have content that's recommended to me. But what's interesting, as Mark said earlier, is that this article has already been seen. So if I'm just sending the tuition reimbursement policy to this employee, perhaps this is not going to solve their problem because they already looked at it. Maybe they want to know what are the institutions that are relevant to that. And as you can see, this document doesn't really match the keywords, etc. It's just there because over time, people searching for tuition ended up clicking on this document, and that's why it becomes the first one. And perhaps this is the one we want to recommend. And again, I can look at additional information on what did the employee look for before, so I can see if this is going to help them, or if maybe their problem, they refine their problem with the keywords they used further down in their session. And that brings me the topic of privacy. So obviously, everything that we're tracking is anonymous. If you're looking to, if this is not something you want to show for your internal employees, definitely something you can turn off. But for external customer, etc., it's all information that's anonymous and private. Good. I'm trying to see if there's another question. Okay, good. So the next part I want to show is the analytics piece. So as knowledge management, you know that analytics is a gold mine of information to be able to improve the knowledge base. So what we do is, as we said, we try to track as much behavioral and also specific information that that people are doing, so that we have a better understanding of what they're actually interacting with, what are they clicking on, and what information is yielding the most. So for instance, here at a high level, I can look at, okay, what are people interacting the most with? What are the profiles, etc. But I can also look at the repositories. So we say we index all of this content. There's a ton of data, but is it all necessary? Is there some content that we thought was interesting, but it's not really? So this really helps you understand that. And to Mark's point earlier, IT spending 80% of their time working on legacy systems. If you can have a better understanding of what people are actually interacting with, that might help you migrate some of those systems and just get rid of some old system to focus on really the content that matters to your employees. Same thing with authors. If you want to have a leaderboard of who actually, maybe who creates the most content, but which content gets the most interacted with, that's also super important. So there's a recipe in creating content that really yields and that helps people find what they're looking for. And most importantly, as Mark said earlier, content gaps. And this is one of the first things most of our customer attacks, really trying to find, okay, what is it that I don't know? What is it that people are searching for and not really finding anything for? And addressing those things really helps. You know, oh, there's 44 people searching for this month. So perhaps like if we create an article on it, then people will be able to self-serve. And as I attack those one after the other, I would get to a point where I have very little content gaps and people can find all the information they're looking for.
Yeah, I think another thing that has come up in the dialogue box and the chat box is, how do you handle outliers? So, you know, this is good. You're finding content gaps, but how about outliers that maybe get a very small percentage of the returned results, but there could be some real golden nuggets in there that could lead to a new innovation or a new insight that's outside of, you know, the crowd. Let's see, the crowd is saying this, but can you find those outliers?
And absolutely. So looking at those queries here, queries without results, queries without clicks, you can definitely see trends and patterns. If there's an outlier, obviously, I mean, it's hard to differentiate an outlier from a statistical perspective from something purely irrelevant. So it's really a matter of getting into the analytics, really understanding how to use it. And we have various tools to be able to help you filter, search for all sorts of, if you're looking for specific keywords, if you're looking for specific patterns of usage as well. There is another functionality that I didn't intend on showing given the time that we have. It's called a visit browser. So this allows you to really look at visits and see, okay, I want to see all visits where people actually search for a certain term, click on a certain result, or didn't click on a certain result. And this really helps you look at these different visits one after the other and really understanding a pattern. So this can also help you identify outliers or golden nuggets of behavior that you really would want to address.
Okay, thanks.
So one other thing I wanted to talk about is our query pipelines. And I see like we're short on time, so I'll do this quickly. But just to answer a question earlier about, is your ML a black box? So our ML gives you a ton of information about how it works, what are the top keywords, what it's looking for. But there's also a way to play with the machine learning using our query pipeline functionality. So this is where you can create different rules for result ranking. So if you want to, for instance, if you want to boost a certain type of result on top of the result list when someone when someone search for a specific term, you can do that. If you want to create synonyms, manage a thesaurus, etc., we can also do that, your stop words. And all of those things work in conjunction with our machine learning. So it's not either machine learning or manual rules. Those two things work together, and you can actually decide the weight that you want to apply to machine learning based on everything that you've configured. So hopefully that.
Yeah, let me make a comment on that, because I think it's very relevant to what we've been looking at. You're able to make those adjustments to the training, but without having to dive into the complicated ontologies and even weights and all of those other parameters. This is am I correct in that? This is a much easier way to do that?
Absolutely. So the idea here is that we want to make it easy. So by not making it a black box, but at the same time, making sure you don't have to be a data scientist to go ahead, tune the relevance. If you're confident about boosting a certain type of results on top of the other, those are all things that you can absolutely do without having to worry about looking at all this complex mathematics and all of those things.
Very good.
So I'm seeing, so I'm gonna stop the demo here and take some time for the questions. I'm seeing we have a lot, which is great. So
yeah, I was going to suggest, it looks like Mark has been really doing an excellent job back in the chat room of answering questions. So I might just say, instead of the chat, if anybody has any lingering questions that they haven't had answered, you please feel free to raise your hand and speak verbally. Mark has been a very good tag team partner for you there, Greg.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
Good morning. I
morning.
am in Northern Virginia. I'm Lene, and I just wanted to ask the question about translation, language translation. If we have a repository of different languages, documents of different languages, would this be able to reach out to that content, do the translation, and then be able to provide relevant search results? Thank you.
That's a good question. So we don't translate content per se. We don't manipulate the content, but we support multiple languages. And our machine learning also support multiple languages. So if you're searching for something in French, for instance, and clicking on French content, we make that difference versus if you're searching in English. So what some of our customers do, because we have and I don't want to get too much into the details here, but there's ways to basically enrich the content as it gets to the index using our indexing pipeline extensions. And you could call an external service to translate the content and put it in our index. Typically, what we're seeing is the content gets translated in the source where we index it, and we just index the multiple language version. And one interesting thing that we're seeing a lot is there's two philosophies. There's the philosophy of duplicating all the content and translating a percentage of every language. And then we would just say, okay, well, English content, but they will show some French and English content. Or people would say, well, most of our content, let's say, is in English, but we have some content that's duplicated in French, in Italian, etc. And in this case, what we would do is we would still show the English version, but we would boost your current language. So we can really support the two approaches.
Thank you so much.
And one quick thing to add to that, just to build on it, is that we also don't really care what that language is from an indexing point of view. So whether it's character-based, whether it is Latin-based, actually it doesn't matter. We see the patterns of that rather than the language itself.
Good morning, this is Amanda Turner. I'm calling from Dubai. Just following on from that question, we work bilingually completely in Arabic and English. So all of the searches, it wouldn't be a matter of choosing an English search or an Arabic search, we would do the search. So because a vast number of our people speak both languages, so it doesn't really matter which one it comes up in. For other people, like in knowledge management, it's probably good for us, even if we only know how to speak one language, to know that there might be 10 other documents that also have information. Does it work in a completely bilingual fashion?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, there's a lot of flexibility, and I showed you a few of, let me just go back here to, sorry about that. So in the query pipelines, we have very advanced way of deciding what type of content you want to show to which audience. And what you could do is, for instance, if someone's profile is knowledge manager, then I'm showing all versions, and I'm even showing draft and different languages. So that's something you can do. Whereas if I'm an end user, then I'm only seeing the latest published version. These are all things that that can be done pretty easily. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, let's one more question. Okay, I don't hear any. Like I said, Mark has been doing a tremendous job in the chat room, answering a whole string of questions. So hopefully everybody had their questions answered. Thank you so much, both Mark and Greg. This has been, and
when we thank them, we wanted to ask to request something. Art, we want to request a copy of the presentation if possible.
Ah, I see. Yes. So would that be possible to pass along your presentation slides,
yeah,
Mark?
Totally. Very happily. I'll send them to both you, Art, and Maria.
Okay, and then Maria will post them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all. Really appreciate the opportunity. Any questions? My email is in the chat as well, mfloysand@coveo.com.
And may I add that we all admire Coveo. We all are we are tracking, we are monitoring, we are looking at the software for already over 10 years. And it really was great 10 years ago, and it gets only better and better.
Well, thank you, Maria. I really appreciate that feedback. I'm filming it.
You may. We are also recording the session, so you can use it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay. Art, anything to add?
Nope.
So good day, everyone, and we will see you next week, continuing our sessions demonstrating AI tools serving KM. And in between, I will send you, of course, all the materials. You'll find the summaries. You'll find the materials on our drive the regular way. Yes. Okay, so bye all. Good day.